Parents share the chilling things their children have said. All parents know that children say the darndest things. Sometimes they say things that are absolutely adorable, and other times they say things that make no sense at all. But there are also times when they say things that are so dark it completely catches you off guard. Concerned parents took to the internet to share the most chilling thing their children have said, and based on their stories, they had every reason to be worried. From statements about gruesome acts to claims of seeing ghosts and monsters, these children's statements will surely send chills up your spine.
Also, if you have not done so already, please subscribe to our channel and click that notification bell to get inspired by these real-life stories every day. Now, back to the story.
1. Dark Intentions. My 6-year-old daughter in the passenger seat a few days ago looked at me and said, "Dad, when I'm 7, I'm going to end you." No, wait, when I'm 8. I had to ask, "How are you going to do that?" She smiled and said, "I'm going to drive over your head with this car." 2. She's not wrong. I was explaining to my niece the difference between things that can and can't change about people. She was confused because she'd met a set of 3 siblings and the eldest wasn't the tallest. So I told her that one day even she, an itty-bitty 4-year-old, could be taller than me, a big huge grown-up. But even if she was taller, I would always be older. She looked at me serious as ever and said, "You'll be dead sooner too." 3. Creepy but clever. Not a parent, but a former teacher. I taught English in a school in Spain, and I wasn't supposed to let the kids know that I speak Spanish, so that they're forced to communicate in English. A 10-year-old girl came up to me one day, grabbed me by the hand and said, with the most horrifying straight face ever, "Te vas a la muerte," which translates to "you're going to die." I was so shocked at the randomness of it that my jaw must have dropped. She then laughed her head off and said, "Ha, you do speak Spanish," and she then skipped away laughing and smiling. It was the creepiest thing a kid has ever said to me, and probably the most clever thing a kid ever did while I was a teacher. 4. Psychic Son. My friend's 3-year-old told his mom there would be lots of blood and mommy would cry. She ended up miscarrying. The second time she got pregnant, he always referred to her belly as them, and then one day early in her pregnancy, she got an ultrasound and it was determined that she was carrying a set of twins. 5. Seeing Ghosts. I was with my sister, her husband, and their 2-year-old daughter. We were talking about loved ones that had recently passed away. My father had passed away sometime recently. My brother-in-law went and grabbed a picture of his mother who'd lost her life in a car crash when he was 6 to show me. When my niece saw the picture, though, she started laughing. We asked her what was so funny, and she looked at us and said, "That's my special friend who sings to me." I still shiver a bit thinking about it. 6. The Storm in His Eyes. My niece drew a picture of a man in her room that she kept telling her parents about. He had 2 different colored eyes and one was gray. When asked why it was gray, she responded, "Because he can see the storm coming." 7. Almost too self-aware. This was recent actually. My son always says odd things. Usually they're funny, but this one threw me for a loop. He's 8 years old. I was telling him how much I love him and thanked him for being in my life. He said, "I didn't choose this life, I couldn't control how it began, but I can control how it ends." 8. Blaming Dad. Not my child, but myself, apparently, because I can't remember. I was 4 years old and now I'm 28, but my parents told me that I once got my toe stuck under a door and lost skin due to it. When I went to my kindergarten the day after, the teacher asked what happened. I told her my dad did it. My parents had to come to school that evening for a talk. Oops. 9. Frightening Foresight. We were driving down a dark, snowy highway late one evening. It was the final stretch of a 16-hour-long road trip. My son, who was around 4 or 5 at the time, was in the back seat and becoming a bit restless. He suddenly covered his face with a blanket and announced loudly, "I don't want to get glass on my face." A few moments later, a pickup truck towing some snowmobiles pulled out in front of a tractor trailer a few cars in front of us and got hit, spinning out into the median. Fortunately, we avoided the accident completely. It was a bit creepy though, almost as though he predicted there was going to be an accident right in front of us. 10. Nana's Room. My mom stayed with us for a few months when my daughter was 3 or 4. When she moved out, the spare room was still called Nana's Room. I asked my daughter to get something upstairs one day. She did and came back to me saying, "Who's that old lady in Nana's room?" I didn't go in that room ever again. 11. Sibling visions. When my son was 3 years old, he kept saying he had a baby sister with a pink bow, but she passed away. We never did have a baby girl, however, we did have a miscarriage just before that episode. 12. Uncanny prediction. Not my child, but a child I was working with at preschool said this to me. You have a baby inside you, but you won't be a mommy. I found out I was pregnant that day and miscarried the next week. 13. The child in yellow. My dad is the owner and runs a hostel in Buenos Aires. We have plenty of people from all over the world, but especially from South America. More often than not, there are no kids around, but every once in a while we'll receive families. So there was this family in the hostel, one little boy and his parents. The little boy was the only kid in the entire place. On a chilly winter night, he appeared in the common room asking who the little girl with a yellow raincoat in the bathroom was. Once again, he was the only underage person in the entire place. The spooky moment came 6 months later. There was no kid this time. A lady from Spain asked us, "Whose child is the little girl with a yellow raincoat in the bathroom?" 14. Cemetery happenings. I used to work at a daycare that was adjacent to a large cemetery. Sometimes the kids would gather at the fence and stare into the cemetery, talking about a little boy they wanted to play with. As it turns out, the part of the cemetery that bordered the fence was the same part where all the kids and babies were buried. It really freaked out some of the girls that worked there. 15. Oh, that's Nick. We were living at a house where a schoolmate of mine lived for 15 years before he passed away. One day my daughter said, "He's in the closet." I asked her, "Who's in the closet?" She replied, "Nick. He looks scary, Daddy." I went to pictures on his Facebook and asked her who it was because we'd never talked about him before. She pointed at the screen and said, "Oh, that's Nick." 16. Go with God. My mom told me that when I was a kid, around the age of 4, I would go to my great-grandmother's every day to spend some time with her. And every time I was going home, I would say to her, "God be with you." But one time, when I was leaving, I told her, "Go with God." According to my mom, she tried to correct me, but I insisted on saying, "Go with God." That night, my great-grandmother passed away. 17. Calling for Jeanne. My son is 21 months old and often says random things as he falls asleep. Choo-choo, star, things like that, just using the words he knows. So last weekend as we were laying in bed about to fall asleep, he says, "Jeanne!" Clear as day. That's my mom's name. Not too weird, except she passed away 8 years ago. 18. Too creepy. "Mommy, there's a person in my bathroom," my 3-year-old daughter said. My blood went cold. Had someone broken into our home stealthily? I was alone with my 2 kids while my husband was at work. I asked my daughter to show me. She took me to her bathroom and said, "He's right there." I asked where. She replied, "Behind you." There was no one behind me though.
If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and consider sharing it with someone who may find it interesting too. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.